To another edition of Working for You. I am Les Roy Williams. I thank you very much for joining us for our Working for You program today. As usual, your company is very much appreciated. Today we will be having a discussion on the backyard garden competition. There has been collaboration between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Tourism in putting together this project called the National Backyard Garden Competition. And we will hear more about it in terms of its objectives and so on, and the advantages of having a backyard garden and all of that. Let me introduce you to my guests. I have in studio with me the Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Kyle Flanders, and this is his first time on this program. Mr. Flanders, welcome.
Thank you.
I have with me also Mrs. Shailene Welcome Lewis, who is Community Tourism Officer in the Ministry of Tourism. Shailene, welcome. It is not your first time.
Thank you.
And I have Mrs. Therese Ambrose Vercels, who is Tourism Research Officer. Welcome, Mrs. Ambrose Vercels. I think it's your first time here. It's not your first time, it's your second time.
Yes.
Okay, so the only person who is here for the first time is Mr. Flanders. Okay, it's time again to have the backyard garden competition. But before we go there, could you give us a history of the backyard garden competition? Some of its objectives, when it was started. Shailene.
My apologies, I didn't realize that was given to me. But the backyard garden competition is really collaborative effort, as you stated before, between the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Agriculture. And the project basically is to encourage development of backyard gardenings while increasing the awareness of healthier eating for persons with fresh daily consumption. We want to encourage the residents, local persons, to actually grow what they want to consume, and with the economic impact that we would have all enjoyed recently, we want to ensure that persons can reduce their their supermarket bills as well. They eat healthier, they spend less. The competition, we launched it on the 10th of October 2020, and we have 37 registrants with a mixture of 26 in vegetable and 11 in ornamental. And so far, it's been going quite good. We have many persons who would have called in after the deadline has passed, who would have shown interest in registering. We've had quite a few persons since the pandemic that would have started their own backyard gardening, and so this is something that we really wanted to encourage between tourism and agriculture, for persons to do more local growing.
Right, so it actually started before the COVID-19 pandemic, but the COVID-19 pandemic has heightened even the need in terms of people to have some sort of a food security. Mm-hmm. Remember at one time when we just had our first 2 cases here, we had lockdowns, we had people lining up and so on at supermarkets and so on. We had panic buying and all of that. one of the major concerns that people had was that they will not have food.
Yes.
That they will not have food, and that really fueled the panic buying that we saw at supermarkets and things like that. And the concern, basically, it was a concern, and a genuine concern in terms of food security.
Yes, it was.
People really want to know that they are secure and that they would have enough food to be able to sustain them. Right, and then we see the competition, of course, but you may find that in the rural areas that people have more space for backyards. Sometimes in urban places, you really don't have that space to have a backyard. So I would like to know, in terms of the competition and what you have seen since it actually started. When did it start, actually? When was it launched?
It was actually, we launched it the 10th of October, but we started from the first Monday in November, which would have been the 2nd of November 2020. And what we did was to encourage persons, even those in the urban areas, to be creative with farming, and also to encourage recycling. You know, we have a lot of plastic waste on the island. So instead of taking your plastic bottles and throwing them away, you can take those same plastic bottles and be creative with planting your fruits and vegetables in it, whether it is on your veranda. We've seen some persons who were so creative to actually have the plastic bottles one after the other lined up, you know, on the walls and stuff like that. Persons have been using pallet boards. Persons have been using old tires, cutting, strategically placing in the small available areas of their yards. So it's not just the rural areas that have an advantage. Urban and rural have both advantages.
Right, but from so far, what you would have seen, you have more people from the rural areas entering the competition, or more people from the urban areas?
I think for this year we have more, right, from the urban areas, and that is because some persons from the rural areas might forgive me, right? I think that's because some persons were a bit concerned with where and how they were actually going to do the farming. But then for the one or two persons that would have started, you know, it encouraged other persons to actually utilize their spaces creatively. So we are expecting that in our second year, right, we would actually be able to have more persons for both categories.
Yes. Now, Mr. Flanders, one of the things is that we have been hearing a lot in terms of the nexus, the connection between agriculture and the tourism industry. And of course, you know, we have our farmers and so on, and one of the things that has been brought up is how the hotels, those who work in the in the tourism industry and so on, the hotels and restaurants and all of that, can tap into, you know, buying local, buying, creating that market for our local farmers. Now, the Ministry of Agriculture is involved with tourism in this project.
Exactly, yeah.
What would the Ministry of Agriculture like to emphasize in terms of the backyard garden project?
Okay, before I answer that question, can I just go back to something that Mrs. Lewis said? Now, as it relates to farming, there are many frontiers for farming. So it's not just only the rural area with the broad span of land. We are trying to encourage different types of farming. And so we want to go more in, one person to lean more into protected farming, vertical farming. So you cannot farm across, you go up. So you take your hydroponic technology, you can use that on a roof, on a landing, if you're in the urban areas. If you do a quick Google search, you realize that in some of the metropolitan areas, persons have large gardens, large farms on top of their buildings and stuff like that. So we try to encourage that. So after this one, when persons see that there's something to be had in this competition. We're hoping that we'll see the urban area pushing forward with more vertical farming, protected farming, hydroponics, aquaponics, and the like. As it relates to this project, now something that the PS for Agriculture said, he said that this is not something new, right? Which is true. Most of us came out of this slavery, and back then, every household had a little plot of land somewhere to the back. They tend to the farm on Sundays and stuff like that. So coming down, this has been a part of our culture, our tradition, but for some reason persons have a little negative connotation to agriculture. So we're trying to change all of that. We want persons to get their hands back into the soil, get back to the healthy eating. I know that you might say organic farming is something new. Again, it is not. Our forefathers never had most of the chemicals that are used today, so they normally farm in a natural way.
Yes.
So we want you to go back to that. So we want to push that aspect of farming with the backyard competition, so that you know that you want to save money, that's how we do so. You want to eat healthy, that's how we do so. So we're trying to get all hands on deck as it relates to growing the sector, growing agriculture. So it's just one part of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, what you mentioned in terms of going back and showing the link from what was way back then to what is now, but you mentioned slavery, but it went back before slavery. With the indigenous people,
yes.
Of course, you have the Caribs and the Arawaks, and what we now call the Arawaks, and what we call the Tainos, and the Kalinagos are the Caribs. And we were told basically that they were farmers.
Subsistence farmers.
Right. They were hunters and fishers, and they farmed the land and so on. And basically it was done for subsistence, which is basically for their families, themselves, and their immediate family, for survival. So it is not something that is new. So, and as you correctly indicated, that over time we sort of have lost that tradition of the backyard garden. And one of the objectives of the competition is to try to bring that back, the whole idea of the backyard garden. Now, what are some of the vegetables that you encourage people to plant and so on?
Well, we don't necessarily encourage them.
It is their choice.
It's their choice. It is their garden. Once they have an active garden, we encourage that. That is why in the guidelines we will ask them to firstly, we had in the initial stages, we had our agricultural officer, who at the time was Mr. Stuart Versailles. He accompanied us to visit the garden. So every time a application came in, a few days later the garden would have been visited, and he would have given his prognosis of what they need to do and how they need to improve. And then we will after that they would have had a grace period where, based on whatever suggestions were given to them, we expected them to carry through with that. And that came down into January, when again Mrs. Lewis and our officer again at the Ministry of Tourism, Miss Catrice Thomas and Mr. Versailles, visited these participants to see how well they were doing. And from there they were able to ascertain that in their gardens they were lacking certain organic materials, things that would help to improve the quality of the soil. And based on those analysis, they decided to do a treatment process for weed control and obviously pest management. During the grace period between November and December, we saw the gardens, and we decided to have 2 videos done in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture. And one was for a simple compost, and the other was for a organic pesticide. That the organic pesticide was made out of neem, garlic, and any sort of pepper. It could be cayenne, it could have been
hot peppers.
Yes, any sort of hot peppers. And because we tried to have persons to think about doing things organically. And that is one of the initiative that is also stressed by Mr. Versailles when he went out into the fields. So we thought that would have been something to help them. In January, we had the first treatment, And again, persons had the option of having a synthetic base treatment, or they could have had the organic base. Both were done. Today, well, started yesterday, and actually today, they would have this would have been the second phase of the treatment for pest control and weed management and all of that. That will last. That is 3 days of treatment. So I must commend them. We have 37 participants, and they visited all 37 to make sure they got their treatment. And as I said before, this is the second phase of that treatment.
I can add to what she said. You asked about choices in crops. Now, two things. One of the reasons we wouldn't force anyone to select a certain crop would be because we don't know what your personal likes are. Right? So if you love your salad and you buy your tomato, your lettuce, your cucumber every week, try to be self-sufficient in maybe one. So plant some tomatoes so that when you go to the supermarket, you only buy 2. Or plant all 3 of them. We don't know what your likes are, so therefore plant what you like and we'll come and judge it. Also, one of the criteria on one of the rules, stipulations on the judging sheet is integrating your crops. So we try to promote integration of various crops so that you can add to the natural. So there are some plants that insects naturally don't like. So you may plant that crop to ward them off so that the other one that they might like would flourish. So that's another reason we're not choosing and say, okay, do this, do that, because we want the flexibility for all the competitors.
Right. Now, while you may not encourage or suggest the type of crops that people would grow, they have to be short-term crops.
Yes. So, Mr. Williams, what we've done since the competition would have started was we've also had put off from the Department of Agriculture one backyard garden workshop, because we don't want for persons just to be in the competition for competition's sake. We also want to sensitize them on what Mr. Flanders said, and Mrs. Versailles, not telling them exactly what crops to grow, but we want to give them a time frame for certain crops and the best timing to grow these crops as well. So our thing is that we want for persons to know what they're farming, right? So we're putting off different workshops for different periods during the course of the competition and even beyond that, right?
Right. So when does the competition actually start to finish? Because you must have a start date in terms of when people start the backyard garden, and there is a time when you would have to go and visit, have a look at the backyard gardens. I mean, you just don't go one time. I suppose you will pay visits to the various gardens, and at the end of it all, then you would have a competition. So it means then you have the different stages from the time of the person conceptualizing what they want to do, and then you have the planting, and then you have the nurturing of the crops and so on to harvest time or to fruition, if you want to say that. So all of those stages are involved in the judging.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so could you explain?
The competition, as we said, started when we had a initial meeting with Mr. Versailles at the Department of Agriculture. That's when it actually started. From there, we had our outreach in different platforms where we advertise what we're trying to do. And what is interesting about this competition is that we ask persons to have active garden, because we know that what we found out as well is that during the COVID period, a lot of people went into gardening. And what is also interesting is that when persons heard about the competition, they started gardening. And then you have our long haulers who have been in it for decades. So you have a mixture of 3 types of gardeners in the competition. And again, we wanted it to be active gardening, meaning persons are active in their garden doing the work. In the first initial stage, it would have been more hands-off, more for us in terms of technical assistance, giving them advice. And as I alluded to in the second phase would have been when we went in and added treatment. And the third stage now will be the judging. And that would have spanned between, let's say, September, when registration started, until we're in the second stage, which is the application of pesticide and weed control chemicals. And again, depending on the type of plants or vegetable being grown, there are different harvest periods. But we leave that up to the experts. They know what they're looking for. They know how to judge the quality of the plant based on if it would have already flourished in a particular season, and based on the criteria that the judges, when they met, they understand what they're looking for in terms of the health of the plants. And later on we will discuss in more detail what are the judging criteria based on the 3 categories that the judges put in place.
Right. Is the judging criteria shared with those who have entered the competition from the beginning? Is it shared with them?
Yes, it is.
So that they can be guided accordingly?
We want transparency. We do not want for the judging to take place. Some person said, but I did not know that this was involved. So what we've done is not just only visit the farms just to see production. We were also in connection with the farmers as well. So we gave not only sprayed, but I think Mrs. Verses would have spoken about the fertilizers that we would have provided, right? We went around and we asked them, how can we have, what can we do for you? Ministry of Agriculture and Tourism together, we started building that connection, right?
So the support mechanism is in place.
Yes. They became a bit more comfortable with growing what it is that they wanted. And during the whole competition, of course, we realized that the time frame between the 2nd of November to the 28th of February would be quick crops, more or less, right? Things that can be harvested during that period. And persons really became comfortable with relating to Ministry of Agriculture. And I also think that the Ministry of Agriculture had an initiative to give backyard farmers seeds and seedlings at one point. Yes,
encouraged.
So I think Mr. Flanders could touch on that.
Yeah, like I said, that was a part of the stimulus package last year also, where we did not leave out the backyard farmers. We gave seedlings to them so that they can, everybody was running a little frightened because of the COVID thing. So we make sure to look out for our backyard farmers also. Added to what Mrs. Lewis was saying, this week is a crucial week for the competition because tomorrow and Friday we're actually going out with the help of the Taiwanese, the Taiwanese mission. We are going to be taking some aerial shots with their drones, and that will be a part of the. You get points for that also. So we're going to go out with our communication team and we're going to take some stills, some aerial shots to get a better idea of how the farms are developing. And also, let's not forget that ornamentals are also a part of this. It's not just vegetables. So some of the ornamentals have been up for quite some time.
So they can decorate the ornaments.
Prune them properly.
Pruning and so on.
So that's going to be part of the overall picture when you're looking at it. So the ornaments are part of it too.
Okay.
And in all of this, we're trying as much as possible to encourage economic opportunities,
Right.
We have a lot of florists on the island, and so the ornamentals, right? Persons.
Okay, so you're saying actually that flowers is involved?
Yes.
Yes.
It's 2 categories actually.
Oh, I see. So you have the agricultural component,
which is vegetables.
Right, vegetables, and then you have the beautificcation component, which has to do with flowers and fruit and so on. Oh, I didn't know that. My mind was just on the agricultural component.
I think there was a third category that I think it was scrapped for.
It was the third category would have been landscaping, but we had. During the period of registration, we didn't have anybody come forward for landscaping, so we had to scale it down to vegetable and ornamental entries. And out of those 2, we have the 37.
It's interesting. I had someone come and do some landscaping at my yard a few weeks ago, and he said to me, well, you don't really have a yard, I have a small yard. But what is in the yard is really hedges and, they're nicely clipped up and just a little grass and so on. He said to me, well, when you're growing flowers can't eat. You should be growing some, he's actually said you should actually have a backyard garden with vegetables and things like that. But at the very same time, there are two different purposes, of course. One you can eat, and the other is for beautification.
And let's not lose the connection between the two. Because for vegetables to strive and foods to strive, you need bees for pollination.
Yes.
And so the flowers would enable the pollination of the food. So everybody working together.
Right. It's a whole ecosystem.
So
it's a whole ecosystem.
I would have touched on the fact that with making yourself self-sustainable, you're looking at the fact that businesses are coming out of this. In community tourism, you have that initiative of community outreach and building entrepreneurship, whether you're doing it individually or performing clusters. And you could have persons who have these gardens, whether it's vegetable or ornamental, could align themselves with tour operators and have a smaller scale, like a garden to table type dining initiative, or hosting events such as intimate events such as a small wedding. These sorts of things can come out of these type of activities.
Right, Shailene, she has mentioned a very good point. I mean, you're the community tourism officer, and how does this competition actually enhance community tourism?
But when we started community tourism, to be quite honest, we weren't really sure the direction that we were going in. But I must say that the pandemic is helping us to some extent, because we realize a lot of smaller community businesses have been created. So what we've done was taken the initiative of having a community tourism workshop in November, right? And we started with trying to merge various businesses together so that we can create that dynamic and authentic experience for persons. So tourism is on a low for now, but there is domestic tourism that everyone can engage in. And so what we've done is, let's take for instance, we've had an art and craft vendor in the community area. We've also had, let's say, a farm, right? And we have tour guides, as she would have stated. And so we take that tour possibly around Bastille, even if it is that we do half of the islands tour, and we go through Bastille, and on your way down to the communities, right, we stop by the art and craft. You stop, there is one package cost, right, that is incurred, and all three vendors or businesses would benefit from it. Stop by the art and craft vendor, and so you not only just stop and look at what he or she made, you also get a package paid for, right? You pay for a package, and so you create something that you will in turn use after. So you would say, oh, I created this, and you take some pride in what you would have created. And so you also start the we call it word of mouth advertising for the experience that you would have received. And so you move along now to the garden. When you move into the garden, you have a herbal tour or you have a fruit picking tour, and then you experience the farm to table experience. Lovely. We would have had one of that, and I think that would have heightened the interest of persons to want to actually cluster, because we realize that tourism will not survive on its own, but we need something else to blend with it. And we also realize that agriculture and tourism are two productive sectors, and what better thing than to merge the two together? Agro-tourism.
Right.
Understand? So we're encouraging more tourism-related businesses within the area to utilize all the riches, the assets that are in the area, right? And build with other businesses to make one huge dynamic experience.
Right. The agro-tourism, that is pretty interesting.
Yes, it is.
The merging of the agriculture and tourism. What about the encouragement of things like local agro processors? So for example, what you you may have, the local stuff, you can process it.
Yes. We do encourage that. We have an agro-processors unit that is attached to the Ministry of Agriculture and various other agro-processors cooperatives, right? These cooperatives link with the local farmers. So they basically take things that are on the market not being used and process drinks. We have chips, and they're getting a bit more advanced because they actually have their labeling intact and expiry dates and stuff like that. And with the assistance of agriculture, right? I know that they put on various workshops to ensure that these persons are educated on how best to move along, and with the practices of COVID and stuff like that. So we do encourage, agro-processors as part of the mix as well. As a matter of fact, when we had our launch, we had agro-processors being exhibited there as well, because we wanted to be able to show the linkages, not just you growing, but you may grow and you yourself can become your own agro-processor. So you have hot peppers and you can create your own sauce. You sell to the market, you sell to the supermarkets, right? Once we encourage that from persons, then we're going to try and cut down the bill of importing vegetables and fruits from the outside. Have our local restaurants and supermarkets purchase from here, because you know what is being grown, you know what they are. It's healthier for all of us too, and gives the local an opportunity to make some money.
Right. So it's all a part of the growing local, eating local, and the
promoting local.
And the promoting local.
We're breaking.
We'll take a break. Okay, welcome back to Working for You, and of course we are having a discussion on the backyard garden project and all that is so good about it. We were discussing at the time the nexus, the connection between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Tourism. And Shailene, you were saying that, for example, the agro-processors, you were talking about the pepper sauce that people can make, growing their own peppers and making pepper sauce and selling to the supermarkets or going to the market and so on, which would create not only some employment for them and create some sort of an income for them, but if everybody had their little backyard garden and so on, it will cut down perhaps on the import bill.
Yes,
the heavy
well, everybody may
bill.
not have their own little backyard gardening, but there are a few persons who may be able to employ other persons as well to work. It starts as a small backyard gardening, but the interest and the love for it grows, and then you find that they're able to employ other persons. They may have a full-time job. Someone else in the community can benefit from what it is that they would have started, right? So livelihood is created from just the backyard garden.
Right.
And then they may want to focus on a specific crop that grows well. Like we have one person in the competition whose market is for local greens.
Yes.
We all grew up loving greens. You hardly get greens sometimes. And her whole yard space, well, half of the yard space, focused on the different varieties of greens. Some I did not even know of. Right? And she said she has a regular market for it. So she's not just growing for her own consumption. She's growing for the general public. Right? She has a steady market, different supermarkets, and making a profit.
Right. And then you have some people who are growing herbs, what we call chives.
Yes.
Right? And that's in their backyard garden too. And these days, nowadays, you know, you have some people growing the other stuff in their backyards too.
Yes, the other stuff.
And making
The other
some money.
stuff, yes.
You know what the other, you know what that other stuff is, right?
Yes.
And that is all part of the backyard gardening.
I guess.
Gardening. But you have had other initiatives, of course, between agriculture and tourism,
Yes.
that basically follow the very same sort of objective of the backyard gardening. You have Restaurant Week.
We have Restaurant Week, which we hope to re-engage in July. We've had some virtual cook-off activities for Restaurant Week, which persons really went for. We thought that, you know, virtually it would not be that great, but it was super. Persons were already engaged in Restaurant Week, and I guess they looked forward for that sort of activity. We've had, we will also be having again, maybe, I think, hopefully, the Best Village competition, which was a huge part of this.
That's a beautification
yes,
aspect
beautification
of it.
project. Yes,
That was the antecedents of why we had the best village, the backyard garden competition, because after COVID and persons after the 2019 Best Village competition, persons were coming to us consistently and asking whether or not we were going to have it again. Then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So when we met as a unit, we thought to ourselves, how can we...
A shorter version.
Yes, how can we keep the momentum going? There was this message coming out of the Department of Agriculture about food security, eating local, as we were saying earlier. And we thought to ourselves, how can we marry all the elements of tourism and agriculture? And we thought about, you know, maybe a gardening competition. And when we contacted the Department of Agriculture, that is when we were informed about the whole initiative of the backyard gardening. And then we figured, you know what, turn it into a competition, get persons engaged, mobilized, energized in having this competition.
Right. Now we subsistence farming is what we are talking about.
Right.
Now, Kyle, tell us something about the advantages of subsistence farming. I know we've been touching them little here and there, but let us hear the advantages.
Yes, as I said, we have been touching them here and there. So, advantages, there are like about three I would just expound on. One, of course, the bottom line. Everybody concerned about their pockets. So therefore, if you're farming, you're doing backyard farming, you're going to reduce your supermarket bill. That's one. The health aspect of it. People complain about, you know, the chemicals being put into plants that are being imported, etc. But you know that if you plant them yourself, you know what's in the ground, what you're doing is almost as organic can be, and so therefore there might not be a problem as it relates to that. Okay, and also food security, we still did. Normally it would have been just a talking point back in the day, but COVID taught us that not anymore. We need to get this thing happening. So therefore, we can use backyard gardens to help to make sure persons have nutritious meals, nutritious food at their fingertips. I remember growing up in Sadlers, where when I got to school, I walk it to school, walk it back. Between school and home, my belly would be, I could get a belly full, an easy belly full. Because I go by Mr. So-and-so, pick a mango, Mrs. So-and-so, you pick a SKNIS, a guava, sugar apple, soursop. You want to reach back to that point. So we're not saying go and raid anybody's yard, because, you know, back in the day, some of us used to do that. But what's hanging over, you can pick. So that's part of food security. Because you realize that the UN had, I think, its objective number 2 about hunger. That is one aspect that can help to fight hunger. So persons should not go hungry if foods are just right there in somebody's backyard hanging over. You know, so those are some advantages of getting back to basics, back to subsistence.
Right, and also it is cost effective.
Very much so.
Because I mean you don't have all of this huge investment that you would have in commercial farming.
Yes.
And so also additionally is that, you know, there's really no hiring of labor. It's either you who can do it or your family
Yes.
can chime in. So you don't have to hire anybody and you don't have to pay anybody to come and work on your little backyard garden. And it is really a source of employment as well for some people, because you may grow something and, you know, while basically it is for your family, your immediate family, and so sometimes you have more than what you can take it to the market and you can sell, or you can encourage the community element in which you sell to people in your community.
Yes, going back to my childhood again, my grandmother have one of the best green thumbs I ever saw. Right? And so she would grow a lot of the stuff, and of course the grandchildren had to go around selling them in the community. So I had to go around knocking doors, knocking fences, knocking windows to try and get the herbs and thyme and all this stuff, the cassava. You know, she would grate it. Sometimes, you know, you make your bread with cassava, make your dumplings. So yes, that's another aspect where you can earn revenue as a side, let's say a side hustle, a side job, even if you have a main bread income earner.
That is correct. The rural areas have always been seen more for agriculture.
Yes.
And while in some places you have an exodus coming from the rural areas and going into the urban areas to live and so on, if people are involved in this sort of a subsistence type of farming, they might not see the need to have to go to the urban areas to look for work and all of that sort of a thing, because they can manage within the rural areas. So it sorts of is a check really on rural and urban movement.
It is.
If you want to put it that way. Another thing, of course, is that to have a backyard garden doesn't require any sort of a specialization. You don't have to have a degree in agriculture. You know, it is something very simple.
It is.
You don't have to be any big time farmer or anything like that. But I was happy to hear that there was support that was being offered to these subsistence farmers by the Ministry of Agriculture, providing seeds and providing fertilizer and providing pesticides and that sort of thing.
Our extension services actually go out to backyard farmers also, not just the commercial farmers, but backyard gardeners. They can take advantage of extension officers and the like.
But Mr. Williams, there is this officer. Well, I think he's just about going on retirement. But it was really a drive from Mr. Stuart Versailles for this whole backyard gardening initiative, and this came even long before the pandemic when he started it. And so he has been one of the main leaders of our committee, right? And he has been going out to these registrants every week. Basically, he has dedicated a lot to backyard gardening. I actually went out with Mr. Versailles, and we went knocking on people's doors because Mr. Versailles passed houses, and he said, "Oh, I see a backyard gardening here," and stop and ask, "You know who lives inside here?" And so we got persons interested and got them to register. So he really was a forceful drive for this whole competition. Even before he thought it would have been a competition, the competition actually came from the Ministry of Tourism's end, because we saw something good that they were doing, and as we said, it's a stem from the Best Village competition. So Mr. Versailles really, I think he really appreciates the fact that we're even here to promote the backyard garden
in the fields right
initiative.
Now.
Yes.
In the fields right now, applying the treatments.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
And even though he's about to be retired, he has dedicated his time on vacation right now to still assist us to ensure that the competition comes to an end. So as a matter of fact, today he's out with the other officer, Miss Thomas, and he's given the second round of fertilizers and spray to the plants. He has even been working on Saturdays to ensure that the farmers get what it is that they need, so that by time the judging time everybody is completed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, Kyle, you spoke about something very interesting. You spoke about wanting to get people's hands back into the soil. However, you know today that some people don't want to put their hands in the soil. Of course, you know, this whole idea that it's a dirty thing and so on. But you also mentioned the whole idea of, so that is the traditional farming, having your hands in the soil. But you mentioned more innovative forms of farming like hydroponics. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so yes, I taught for about 13 years. I taught agricultural science, among other subjects. And during that time, you would realize that some of these classes for agriculture by fifth form, very small. Nobody wanted to do the subject. So this year, the ministry have taken an initiative, we call it the Education Initiative, where we're trying to go out and educate or sell this sector, sell the subjects, sell the area of expertise to students. So we, like I said, the traditional, they don't want to see that right now. So we're looking at more non-conventional methods of farming. Hydroponics is farming without the use of soil. So you can have your plants in some nice troughs, or you can have them in some styrofoam containers and water to the bottom to feed the plants and things like that. You can have a nice shade house, a nice greenhouse, and you do production in that. You know, the monkeys are probably in St. Kitts, and so we're trying to encourage protected farming also.
And the thing about it is that the monkeys are now part of the backyard.
Well, that is
so
true.
you have them to contend with as well.
Because some of them did complain about monkeys.
Yeah, and then she said they're assisting in the harvesting.
For their own benefit. So yes, we're trying to get more innovative methods to lure in the youth, also the women in agriculture. We're trying to get all of them, all hands on deck, as I said before. So look forward to more news about what we're going to do as the Ministry of Agriculture as it relates to getting youth more involved. Right now we're going to partner with the CFBC and we're going to do we're going to help them technically and give them advice and stuff like that, and so you'll see a lot more in innovative ways coming forward.
Right. Now in the competition that you have, is there anyone who has used that form of technology, hydroponics technology?
I don't think in the competition, no.
So. Traditional farming.
Yeah.
The traditional farming,
Yes.
you've had no one.
In traditional farming, yes, but
we've had persons doing the hydroponic farming, but not in the competition. Right? So we're hoping that maybe next year we'll be able to have an integration of more.
Some of them are engaged in protected farming though, because some of them have their cages and things like that to protect their crops from monkeys and other bad actors. So you have a few who are in protective but not hydroponics per se.
Right, and then you have what you call the aquaponics, where people as well, in their space, in their home, in this, space that they have at their homes and so on, can have fish.
Yes, and use the waste from the fish.
And use the waste from the fish.
Feed the plant. Yes.
To feed the plant.
Yeah, nutrients for the plants. Yes.
Right, and not only that. While we're talking basically in terms of crops, I know it's a backyard gardening which kind of limits it, but when we're talking about subsistence farming, it goes beyond backyard gardening.
It does.
Because you also have livestock. And when I was growing up, for example, we used to have sheep. And I remember every morning I had to go out to tie the sheep out on the pasture, what they used to call at that time nuts ground. In Molyneux, because they used to do a lot of nuts there and so on. And in the afternoon, you had to go out and you have to bring back the bring the sheep in, and you're under the house. That time, your house was on nogs and that sort of a thing. So that is all a part of, as well, of subsistence farming, even though it is not included here in the whole thing of backyard gardening, but livestock.
Yes.
Yeah, I know because
because one of the initiatives we did last year during the COVID time was rabbits. I think AICA came on board to help us with the production of rabbits. So we gave persons in the backyard some rabbits, but what happened is that, based on what the PS said, some of them, they became pets, and so they were afraid to eat them. So that's what happened there. But yes, we are encouraging. We want some broiler production, we want some rabbit production and things like that. So yes, the livestock are a large part of our overall vision of farming in general, backyard and commercial.
Right.
Well, I had my share of rabbits from the same initiative.
How did that
So
go?
I got my 2 rabbits, and I now have 8 rabbits. I have 6 young ones. Yeah,
Nice.
so mine is totally different to the pet, the petting concept. But it was really
So you're gonna eat
a
yours?
different initiative and really nice. And I heard persons were actually trying to get their names on the list for the next sets that they would actually be giving out.
Right. No, I know that we spoke about the COVID-19 pandemic. We spoke about the lockdowns and so on that we had initially, from March for a few months really, and so on. And it gave people an opportunity maybe to be in their back gardens and to be in their flower gardens and that sort of a thing. But something more importantly that gardening does. And what do you think that is?
Exercise.
Stress relief.
It's exercise, which is very healthy,
Yes.
and it is also stress
Stress
relief
relief,
as
yes.
well. Because especially if when you are having these lockdowns and all of this sort of a thing, it frees your mind.
Yes,
it
yeah,
helps
it
you
does.
to, because if you're in the house all the time,
Fresh
of
breeze.
course, the fresh breeze and staying close to the earth.
Yes, give a purpose.
Actually, there's a study by the International Association of Horticulture Producers that says that farming in general increases life satisfaction, the quality of life, builds sense of community, and these are the things that we want to happen. We want to bring back this sense of pride, having persons, as he was saying earlier, we used to have this barter system where my grandmother had something, and maybe my grandmother had pumpkins, and your grandmother had potatoes, and I want some potato dumpling. I said, I'm going over Miss Maisie to get some potatoes. That's the type
right.
of thing. This sense of community, love in the community. We need to get back to where we were before, and these types of initiatives, we believe, will bring that back.
Yeah, that is an important part of it. The physical part of it, which is the exercise that you get, and then the mental part of it.
Yeah.
I have a very good friend who, I don't want to call his name on this program, but he works for government, and he has won a senior government job, and I admire him because he always says, when I leave here in the afternoon, I go to my garden. I go to my garden, and that is where I really distress. That is where I really, I can think, and I can, so that in itself is a plus.
Yes,
It is.
The physical and the mental benefits that come from the emotional well-being.
And you feel a sense of self-fulfillment when you're eating something that you actually grew.
That you actually
You saw from
do.
a seed to a seedling all the way to harvest. You feel a sense of pride, self-accomplishment. So, yeah.
And I have an aunt actually who, well, more than one, that loves, they love gardening. And not only do they love gardening, but they get a sense of fulfillment, self-fulfillment, when they can take their flowers and use their own flowers to decorate in their homes, putting them in vase and all of that sort of a thing. Something that you yourself, would have watered, would have grown, would have nurtured, and then to see it bloom, the final product and so on, brings that sense
Fills you
of
up, man.
satisfaction.
Yes, it
Yes, it
does.
is.
That's true.
Yes, it
You're eating what you would have grown, not what somebody else supplied for you. And of course, because you're eating what you would have grown, you know what you're
You
eating.
know what's in
Yes,
it.
it is.
And that is why you spoke about the organic. You're promoting the organic. Why the organic?
Because, we know that farming is basically what promotes healthy living, and as Mr. Flanders was saying earlier, that when we import food, we do not know what type of chemicals. We don't
Yes.
know how they are being monitored. We don't know if during the time of harvesting, if they were just the application would just happen, because you have a period in which application is done before you could harvest these things. So we don't know. There are a lot of unknowns. But when you do that, when you have an organic chemical that has been added, the breakdown process is much quicker. It is safer. So the end result is that you are eating something that is healthier for you. So that's why we are promoting organic uses.
Right. Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the competition.
Yes.
Tell us more about the competition.
Well, I can tell you that at the end of the competition, we're going to have some really awesome prizes for persons, even though generally we had no idea as such as to...
Before we even get into the prizes, I want you to tell me, for example,
Yes.
How many entries you have, how many people applied, the applicants, the categories for judging, the sort of the criteria that you use for judging. I need to know those nitty-gritties so that people,
Okay, so we have 37 registrants, right? We have 26 for the vegetable and we have 11 for the ornamental. For the judging now, Mr. Verses is really the one who would have put this together. So we're going to try our best to see if we can go through this, right? For the judging, it's under 3 segments, which would be, 3 plus a bonus segment. First is plant cultivation and health. We have layout. And then the third is environment. And I think you would have heard us speak, Mr. Flanders would have spoken about the drone footage that will take place from tomorrow and Friday. That is the bonus segment. We give persons an opportunity to score an extra 5 points by just being in their gardens as taking a photo for agriculture and Ministry of Tourism's benefit as well as theirs, right? And so under the plant cultivation and health, we have they're going to be judged on 8 different segments, totaling 40 points, 5 points each. Creative methods adopted and implemented, the use of the garden space. I mean, as you said, some persons have very little garden space. Health of plants, the vigor of it, pest control, weed control, identification of plant, which is labeling, not just growing, but
knowing what you're
you come into the garden, and even for other persons, you don't know what certain plants are, but with the labels, you'll be able to identify it.
right.
And use of water, conservational methods, proper use of crop integration practices.
And in the second category, which is a layout, we're looking at it's total 15 points, 5 points each. Physical layout of the garden, so we're going to look and see exactly how you decided to lay out your garden, where the footpaths are, that kind of thing. The organization of the plants in the garden. Again, remember I spoke about the integration. So you want to know if you're going to pair your plants properly. You're going to have one that's tall to give the other one things like that. Then also the clear walk path, that's 5 points. So we want to know that you have access to your overall garden. Don't be walking through, trotting down itself or stretching over. No, we want to know that you have comfortable access to the garden.
Right. And the last segment will be the environment. We want persons to, utilize recyclable material in the garden. We'll be able to see the impact of the recycled material used, the uniqueness. When I enter your garden, what aspect of garden or what materials we use that give it something totally different that I've never seen before. We want to have it this wow factor when we enter your garden. And obviously the sustainability aspect of it is not about just gardening for competition, but as we've been preaching all day and throughout the competition, but be able to feed yourself and your family if it goes to that.
Right. So you good point that you're making in terms of the sustainable farming.
Right.
Because that is really tied to farming and in terms of how we treat the environment.
Yes. Yes. And again, how clean you keep your environment, the sanitation of the garden. And the last aspect would be the judge score, which is the bonus score, and as we said, it is based on the aerial footage that will be taking place tomorrow and Friday. So this is what the participants received and they'll be working off of.
Okay. Now you have a committee, you would have a panel of judges. Do you mind sharing, for example, where your applicants would have come from? All around the country?
Yes.
Are they concentrated in a particular...
the competitors?
The competitors,
Oh,
I
yes.
mean.
Yes. All over. We have participants from all over: Sandy Point, Bird Rock, Taylor, St. Peter's, Halfway Tree, Cedar Grove, even in those nice big areas of Cedar Grove. We have Old Road, Newton Ground, Ocean Garden. So it's really right around the island. So it's not just stationed on the west side or mostly on the eastern side of the island.
So it's a real national
Yes,
event.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And then you were speaking in terms of what rewards would be given. The prizes.
Yes. Everybody likes a reward at the end of doing something great. Makes the competition even more competitive when you hear that you're getting lovely prizes. So for vegetable, first prize, we will be given ground cover, an irrigation system, wheelbarrow, a gardening toolkit which comprises of one machete, one hand trowel, a pick, a rake, scuffle hoe, and a secateur. Right? And we'll also be giving them a lovely basket, a plaque from both the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Agriculture, assorted seeds. It sounds interesting, right? Gardening hose and control head. Now that is only the first prize. Now you enter just the competition and thinking, okay, I'm just doing this because my garden looks lovely and I think, but I'm not thinking I would be rewarded with such if I win first prize. The second prize is a little simpler, of course, which has irrigation system, wheelbarrow, the gardening toolkit, a basket, a plaque, assorted seeds, and gardening hose with control head. For the third prize, we have an irrigation system. So all three would be getting an irrigation system as well as the gardening toolkit. They'll also be getting a basket, a plaque as well, assorted seeds to continue farming, of course, and the gardening hose with the control head.
All right, for the ornamental, first prize, irrigation system, wheelbarrow, a gardening toolkit with the same tools that she mentioned earlier, the plaque, the basket, and the gardening hose. Also for second prize, they're only what first and second for the ornamental because of the number that went in. So irrigation system, gardening toolkit, the basket, the plaque, gardening hose, and with the control head, 50 feet.
Now, Mr. Williams, doesn't the prizes sound really
very, very attractive?
Very,
very attractive.
Yes. Collaborative.
It's a pity I don't have a back garden.
But that doesn't mean that you can't gear up yourself for next year.
For next year, maybe I'll try a thing.
Oh no, this year.
Well,
Later in the year.
I might try a thing. But let us go to the phone lines and see if we have any callers.
Sure.
So the numbers to call are 1-718-577-2916. That is 1-718-577-2916. That's the international number. And the local number is 465-2555. 465-2555. We welcome your calls. Right. So you're saying that we would have had workshops and all of that for the subsistence farmers and so on. You know, I was thinking, this is so important what you're doing, because in any economy, what is being encouraged is small businesses. And when you look around town, really, you see people who are selling. They're selling their fruits, they're selling their vegetables, whether it is mango, whether it is guineps or skinips or whatever we call them in different countries, the chetnet or whatever. In different countries, they call them different names within the Caribbean. Or they're selling their soursop, or they're selling their tibush, you know, their pumpkin, they you know, they have their stalls and they're selling. And that is so important, because sometimes we like to think about big economy and big business. But really and truly, the engine of growth of any economy is really the small businesses.
And that is
businesses.
why we're encouraging the clusters to be formed, you know, integrating other businesses with the local farmers, small businesses that are being created. We want to get more out of the...
We have a call. Working for you, good afternoon. Good afternoon, working for you.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to your guests them there. Now, I so agree with everything you all say about backyard garden farming, because it's so important, especially under this COVID-19. I remember when I was a young man coming up. We used to mountain ground. But let me tell you something, we had the backyard garden too. And everyone in the community had their little backyard garden. They had pumpkin, they had sweet potato, they had nuts. They had everything you want in your backyard garden, you up your time and everything. Nothing big, you know, in the mountain you plant it big. And people used to produce from the backyard garden and live off of the backyard garden. I remember some people didn't want to go in the mountain.
Okay, we seem to would have lost that caller.
Hello, Adia, hello? Hello?
We can't hear.
Hello? Hello?
Right. So we were talking about the small businesses, the entrepreneurship, you know, in terms of these subsistence farmers being able to ply their trade, to make some money, of course, which is one of the advantages. And not only that, to provide a service to the community, which is very, very important. Not only are they can feed themselves, but they can sell some of what they produce to feed others, and in a very healthy way.
And we've been seeing a lot of more vegetable and fruit stalls that have been erected around the island. When you're driving past, you'd realize places that would have just been empty, we are seeing persons now erecting stalls, and we're hoping that from this backyard garden competition initiative that we'll be able to encourage healthier snacking from persons as well. More stalls mean that your options would be more fruits as well, not just growing vegetables but also fruits as well. So what has been happening with the erection of more stalls, vegetable stalls, is definitely something that I think agriculture is very pleased for.
Of course.
Preaching about this, growing local for years, and now we are seeing more persons growing more local foods and vegetables.
Yes.
And I think that is definitely something that they loved.
And to close the loop as it relates to small businesses and entrepreneur, you have the agro-processors, as we mentioned earlier, so that prevents wastage, wastage of food and fruits. If you don't get it sold at one point, you can take it to the agro-processors and they can turn that into something with value added. Jams, jellies, even take one banana, make banana bread, sell, that kind of thing. So everything just falls into each other.
Yes, right. I would invite that caller who called before to call back. We were having some difficulty in hearing what you had to say. So please do call back. It seems as though you had a very important point that you wanted to make. Right. Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to speak about with respect to the backyard garden competition?
Just to let persons know that the final judging days are the 3rd and 4th of March. We have a panel of 5 judges. 6 judges, sorry. They're technocrats and not so much technocrats, because we want to want to diversify the answer and make it as transparent and authentic as possible in terms of the results, so that there's no body saying that they're unsatisfied with the results. So that will happen on the 3rd and the 4th.
We have a caller. Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Yes.
You and you get them there. I believe you are doing a wonderful job to encourage more people to do backyard gardening, because that is how we come up in life. Them telling you had extra land that you're going to farm peace, and then that's if you control the land, you're going to farm peace and then do your backyard gardening and make a little money. You understand?
Yes.
And the next thing again, I want to encourage the young men and women in the federation, to see that, to go that way, because it's very important. This is the way I come up in life. Now, some people, right, they prefer to plant flowers, they prefer to plant this, they prefer to plant that. But when you plant your pumpkin and your little sweet potato and your little herbs and your thyme, they come beg the piece, but they got a nice flowers garden. And I believe that backyard garden, I see a lot of people right now, even up in McKinley, living off of the backyard garden, paying the light bill, paying some of them paying the water bill, the light bill off of the garden. I was talking to a lady the other day, and she told me that her own garden, she don't pay she bills. You understand?
Yes.
And I believe that if we do more of that, I believe that, you see, look how this COVID in right now, if people was in more backyard garden, we would not have so much problem.
Right.
You understand? We live off our own yard, we own soil, plant, and grow, and you could even sell. You understand? Because most people now buying things from these backyard garden farmers. And I'm just trying to encourage the young men and women to find something positive to do. Those, especially those who just say they can't find nothing to do. And we got land up and down, wasting up and down. You could do a little backyard, but a little extra land, but your neighbor, go ask the neighbor, walk up the piece of land. I just give me some sweet potato and some pumpkin. I think give me the water. Out of the backyard, you just give me them, just give me them. You understand?
Yes.
So it's important to educate the people and to what going on in the federation. Good program as usual. God bless.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
For your input. Working for you. No, there's no caller. The difference between the vegetable garden, of course, is that it's the backyard. Working for you. Good afternoon.
That's right.
Yes, good afternoon.
Okay, you got a great day just now.
Yes.
Yeah, as usual.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to congratulate you and your other guests there on the program for educating the whole nation, all who are listening. But one thing I don't agree with you all, using this word backyard. Let us use left yard, right yard, and front yard. Because
I don't understand what you mean.
A man had he big backyard. And he had a shop. And while he in front in the shop, he took the nut-tail thief, went in the man's backyard. Thief the man big pumpkin and bring it round to the front and sell the same man. So I would suggest anybody who have a backyard, make sure you have a good fencing. Or you put your front of your house turn it round to the back, now you can see your garden. But this yard planting, I observed that a couple of years ago when I was living with my mother. She had a little space in the front of her yard, up on the left side. It wasn't bigger than a sheet of plywood, which is 8 by 4. And when I see what she put in the kitchen from the little yard, I say, well, yard could pay. But not to the back, come to the front. So
Yeah.
keep up this program with the education.
Usually the ornamental aspect of it is in the front.
Definitely.
The flowers are in the front and the vegetables are in the back.
Yeah, but they ain't coming in front for the ornament, you know.
They're going to the back for the
To the back, and
vegetables.
you're looking back.
Where people have to put additional security in place. Get dogs or something.
Or it has some kind of decorated plants with some point.
Yes.
Yeah, you put them there by your fence and spread them out that they can't jump over.
Right.
And I have a suggestion for everybody. The more tamarind or tamon we eat, it is better for us.
Okay.
It builds up our immune system. So when Mr. COVID believed he could come in here, he can meet us, our immune system well strong, and he can go somewhere else. So that's my advice. Eat a lot of tamarind and green lime and all kind of vitamin C.
Right.
So that's
And
my advice.
Yes, and he has mentioned a very good point. Thank you very much
Yeah,
for
okay then, all the best.
your call. Very much appreciated. Working for you. Good afternoon.
This is one of the calls.
Hello.
Hi, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to the panel.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's a joy and pleasure for being doing something in your backyard. And to be honest with you, I got some good stuff out of my backyard because I'm one in the competition as well.
Oh.
When you look at the stuff that you get, the smile on your face, tell you, wow, anybody else can do it.
Very
So
good.
I'm encouraging other people, even you, Mr. Williams, the panel, you guys to join the Backyard Association.
Yes. Yes.
You know, do a little stuff in your backyard.
Yes.
Okay?
I actually planted something in my backyard the other day, but I don't see it really growing yet. I like spinach and so on, so I planted some spinach, but I'm yet to see it grow.
I have to come and visit you to see what is your problem then.
Yes,
Because I have spinach at
I
home
probably
as
need
well,
some
and they're
technical help. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. So that was one of your competitors. Yeah, and she's basically, extolling the wonders of what can actually come from the backyard garden.
And we're happy that she called in, because then you will see that what we were trying to, the message is being heard, and you have it first-hand experience as well.
Yes.
Right, and then the caller before her mentioned something very, very important in terms of the link between what you are growing and your health.
Yes.
Once ago, we had a lot of bush teas. People actually grow their bush teas, their basil, their sage, lemongrass, and all cattle tongue and so
everything
on.
had a health benefit.
Yes, and they're actually growing them in their yard. And so therefore, when they get sick and so on, they can go to, have this bush and have that bush and so on and so on. And these were some of the home remedies,
Right.
that people usually use when they get sick. I mean, my great-grandmother, God bless her soul, Auntie Rose, she knew. We used to call her Auntie Rose, but she was my great-grandmother. But we call her Auntie because that's what everybody call her.
Auntie Rose.
Auntie Rose. But she knew all these bushes. When you were sick, what to give you. And that sort of a thing. I mean, she was a pharmacist. Really. She was a pharmacist.
Without a degree.
That is correct. Without a degree. She knew what bush is good for this and what bush is good for that. And these are just some of the things, we can have healthy living just by what we cultivate. Healthy living is also having a backyard garden.
It is.
It is living healthily by growing the things that would nourish us, making use of the earth that God has given to us.
Yep. You know, Mr. Williams, when we thought of having this competition, right, we thought on an even larger scale because, you know, for community tourism, it's a lot of beautification that is involved, right? So if we can have persons already start fueled with the passion of growing their own ornamental plants especially, right? Probably in some of the abandoned...
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
When I was younger and I had my first child, the child just keep on bawling.
Yes.
And this old lady comes and she take the child from me and she carry me up by what the gate. Where my can't see, where Dr. Celtic house is.
Yes.
And he had a tree there. And she picked a piece of leaf. She took off the child diaper, them some they used to wear diaper. And she tickled the child bum. And the mess will come out. She said, this is what have the child bawling.
The child was constipated.
Huh?
The child was constipated.
Yes, she said, you don't go up by the doctor anytime you see the baby can to go up, go and get the castelline bush.
Yes.
And tickle the bum.
Yes.
And it don't come out. So the old people, them did not a lot. And next time again, my son, I used to carry him, Dr. Simon, was when he got off, every minute he got his reason sharpness of bread. And this day, my father had this purple tree in the garden. And he said the little boy take him with it. And then my father called him, cut out the fence for his garden, walk him through there, and he measured him, and he cut out a piece of here. And you remember the big penny? Remember the brass penny?
Yes. Yes, I remember that.
He took the brass penny with one of them galvanized broad nails where the tongue galvanized and to measure him. And then he took the kind of wire where the fence or fish pot and so, and he sent home which part he measured by the tree, and he said nobody got there. And my son, let God bless him, father, they don't gone. He never had the reading again.
Right.
And that tree stayed here and it died down. And then when it turned brown, he went, he took the bush, he dried it, and he gave him a bottle of it to drink. And my son never, ever sick again. He ain't even got no rotten teeth anymore. I wonder if it's that making me teach them so.
Praise the Lord.
And my son 40 something else. So the old people, them was doctor. They didn't know what they're doing.
That's right.
This is dumpling.
Okay, dumpling. Thank you.
Thank you.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Yeah, but that's why.
Yes, good afternoon.
You know, we got the natural soil here. The natural land, the healthy land. You know that if we was living off our natural land and the natural soil, you know, we could have cared about COVID.
Yeah.
You understand? Because when I see that where we come from, these yam, these sweet potato, Dashin, Tanya, when they're telling us them bad for us, people scraping for them now, they're good for our health because the starches is not very good.
Yes.
Now look at it now. We living upon this fast food, high blood pressure, sugar, obesity, and all those things. You understand? Kidney failures and all those things. Back in our days, not a thing like them. Because we used to live off our natural land, eat our cassava bread. We got cassava plant in the yard. You see your mother go and we scrape the cassava, they squeeze it out, they dry it, they even make starch and throw out it. We turn cassava cocoa can, you call it cassava can, cocoa can, and fish. And all those things we enjoy when we coming up young.
Dumpling.
Yes.
Let's cook it, and these are the food we used to eat. You know what, nothing but you used to get a little chicken pox, a little measles, and all those things, sometimes a little hard boil. And maybe mums and them things to come around long term. And then to give vaccine for all those things. I believe that if we was living off a natural soil, our natural land, we could have care about vaccine and all those things.
Yes.
Because everybody will be healthy. And these things will come around and run affect us. Because we eat out of our natural soil.
Yeah.
All right then.
Thank you so much for your call. So you see, the whole initiative that you would have started, the project and so on, people are actually seeing the benefits of it. You know, and the link between that and so many benefits of growing your own food in your backyard garden. The health benefits he spoke about. The lady before, she spoke about the tibush and all of that sort of a thing and how that helps. Then Kyle, of course, you mentioned on this program the advantages. You know, it's cheaper in the long run for people. You don't have to go to the supermarket to spend money when you actually have your stuff in your yard.
And now the doctor bill could be reduced
The
because
doctor bill can be reduced.
the health aspect.
You know, it offers some employment for people. It offers some income. You can actually feed your family. You know, from your garden.
The mental
And the physical benefits and so on. So it is a good initiative between the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Tourism. An excellent initiative and partnership that you have. Anything else you would like to say, Sherry?
I was just going to add, right, that even though they're starting the initiative right in their backyards, right, which we really love, we would hope that it goes to even further within the communities. You'd realize that there are a lot of abandoned homes, yards, and instead of just having your own backyard garden, the community can come together to create community gardens, beautification gardens, or vegetative gardens. Everybody can benefit from the areas that are just abandoned. At the end of the day, when tourism hits back on the ground, we should be able to have beautiful environments that is catered for from all persons. That national pride would have already been ignited from your very backyard and spread within the community. Now it only takes for one community to start, and then, you know, every other community is going to want their community to look even better than the other community. So using those abandoned spaces, we're hoping that persons will take the initiative for those, clean them up. Persons don't want to take responsibility for the areas, but after you start cleaning, you're going to see persons coming. But they too can be a part of the same initiative where everybody can benefit, right? Don't you agree, Mr.
I agree. You mentioned a very good point, which has to do with the pooling of resources.
Yes.
And of course, sometimes that is how, you know, in small communities and so on, you have people coming together, pooling their resources and so on. And basically, that has been how cooperatives have come about.
Yes.
You know, farmers, cooperatives and so on. People coming together and pooling their resources. And they are building the community.
Yes, they are.
You know, and that is the whole thing. Community agriculture, community tourism, and so on. At the end of it all, everyone benefits.
Exactly. Because again, even though we're the Ministry of Tourism, you are not just looking at persons who are coming in from plane or from the boats. We have to look at the people on the ground, our local people. Make sure that whatever we produce, it's for their benefit first. And then our external visitors will reap the benefits as well. But look in-house first.
Yes, and that is what we call sustainable living.
Right.
That is sustainable living. Planting our own food in our back gardens, eating what we produce, and feeding the community with what we have is really sustainable living.
Right.
We are out of time. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we leave?
just to thank everybody who has assisted in getting this initiative off the ground, all our judges, Mr. Versailles, the participants who are the lifeblood of this competition, the Ministry of Agriculture, everybody who
Our
has
sponsors,
assisted, our
even if you don't know you are going to sponsor us yet, we thank you in advance.
Yes.
So who are some of your sponsors?
We do not have anything finalized as yet, but that's why we are thanking them in advance.
Oh, I see. Okay.
For now, the Taiwanese mission. For now, the Taiwanese.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. You know, we thank God for the Taiwanese, because they have been a tower of support.
Yes, they are.
Really, in terms of supporting communities, supporting our agricultural initiative, and so many other initiatives that we have in this country. I don't know if any one of you have ever been to Taiwan, but going to Taiwan and basically seeing how the Taiwanese have developed that country, developed agriculture in that country, it is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. If you go to certain homes, you would realize that they're growing rice in their backyards.
Okay.
You know, so this is not something new to them. And so therefore, they feel right at home with initiatives like what you have embarked upon. You know, and we are eternally grateful to them. Thank you so much. I want to thank you, Kyle Flanders, and to congratulate you in your new position, even though you know January you said you've been there as Assistant Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Kyle Flanders. Mrs. Shailene, welcome. Lewis, I noticed she has an additional surname, so it means then that she got married at some point. The last time she was here, she was not married. And Shailene, I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
In your marriage.
Thank you.
And she's Community Tourism Officer in the Ministry of Tourism. And Mrs. Teres Ambrose Versailles, or Stuart Versailles is your husband, and so therefore, you know, you're a tourism research officer. No wonder you were so au fait with the material in terms of agriculture and all of that.
Professional.
Quite versatile.
Purely professional.
And also, I know that you speak Spanish, so I say it un placer.
Igualmente.
Okay. I want to thank all of our callers and our listeners to today's program. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion, which has to do with how we grow. We use the earth to nourish us in terms of what we grow and so on. And it's actually healthier for all of us. The Backyard Garden Initiative put on by the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Tourism. Thank you very much. Next week we will be back with another edition of Working for You. Until then, I am Lesroy Williams. Take care.